So Sheepdog, as you'll come to find out, was a 14-year journey. Stephen and Matt, we met and started collaborating in 2019 on the film, and I joined this wonderful duo. This film was shot under a low-budget agreement in Western Massachusetts in the middle of winter, as you saw, in this gorgeous town of Turner's Falls and Greenfield in Western Massachusetts. And we chose that place for a variety of reasons, but it was a wonderful, became a character in our film, and due to the aerial photography that you saw, but also it was a great, the community embraced this story, and so in honoring the message of the film, it just seemed like a perfect place to set it. It was 21 days and a lot of challenges, shooting in the winter, keeping people warm, keeping people in shelter when it would just start snowing on us unplanned, and all the scheduling challenges, as you can imagine, filming an indie movie with such a short amount of time. So I guess my first question would be to Stephen and give you a little bit of the origin story of why Sheepdog, why this moment?
Sure. Do we have any veterans with us right now? All right, yes.
Yes.
Okay. So the sort of seminal moment for me was in 2011, my car had broken down 3 hours north of LA, and I got picked up by a local tow truck driver who over the course of a 3-hour drive into LA began to open up about his challenges in his marriage and being a father of 3, his financial hardship, and then he began to open up about the various medications that he was on that were tethered to his military service and his post-traumatic stress from his deployments. And during that drive, I don't think I said but 3 words, and throughout his telling of his service, he kept saying to me, I can't believe I'm telling you this. I've never told anybody this. I've never told a therapist. I've never told my wife. And so when I got back to LA, I thanked him for getting me home safe, and I saw a look in his eyes that I was pretty sure I would never see him again, and he probably wanted it that way. And what I learned from that moment was that it was easier for him to speak to a stranger that he would never see again, that he could never be judged by, and or be reminded of that experience. But for me, it lit a spark within, which was more than curiosity. It was a sense of responsibility, because I was certain that there had to be more men and women like him out there that were perhaps suffering in silence. And it was that summer that I had approached Matt, and I had shared this experience with Matt the same month it happened, but I'd said to Matt, listen, I'm journaling. I don't know if this is going to become a screenplay. I don't know what this is, but I just know that I need to uncover the truth and get some answers. And I said, if it becomes a film, I think you should play my best friend in it, and the caveat is to go out on the road with me, because you need to see it for yourself. And sure enough, Matt did, and that was the summer of 2011. And so we went on a nationwide road trip all across country. We would speak to anybody and everybody that would speak to us that had either served, were active duty, mental health professionals, Gold Star family members, and that began to inform the foundation of what became Sheepdog, because the journey continued for years of researching and having an office at the Detroit VA and doing role playing with doctors and mental health workers and so on. So, but in that 14-year journey, I'll tell you really quickly that we also had many false starts, as you do in independent film. There was a time in 2016 we were looking to go to camera. We were pretty close. Things fell apart in financing, and you're having to rebuild and kind of rebuild your team and figure out that. So, but it was just in a nutshell, it was meant to happen when it did happen, and I could not imagine it truly was lightning in a bottle. And we could never capture what we captured in making that film at that time.
I have a question for Matt. Your character is such a beautiful, layered story, and it opens up so much of, and it's a catalyst for Calvin, right? To finally kind of come to the door of finding his tribe, and that beautiful scene in the kitchen, which is so fraught. So I'm wondering, what's your process in terms of approaching the character, your performance? It's transformational, obviously, with the choices you made. So, what went into sort of preparing to play that part?
Yes, this was obviously, or I don't know, obviously, but this was very different than anything I'd ever played before. In that, I mean, I'm like coming onto this project, like Steven said from the very beginning in 2011, and being able to, spend a decade listening to stories and hearing firsthand experiences. I think like informed the character so much more than anything else I've ever done. But also, like Steven said, over the 14 years, there have been times that the project would start to come together and then sort of fall apart and then come together and fall apart. So when we went to go shoot it, like actually shoot it this last time, there was a moment where I called up Steven because I started to realize, like as we were getting close to shoot it, that like, oh my gosh, I'm actually gonna play this role. Like we've been talking about this for I mean, at that time it was, 12 years, and we've been, like these characters I've been, sort of imagining what it was gonna be like to play Daryl, and but we got to this point where I was starting to sort of like panic and get to, like, I don't know, am I gonna be able to get it right? Am I gonna be able to like do it justice to all these men and women that have shared their stories with us over the years? And so I had a moment where I called Stephen and I was like starting to panic a little and like, are we getting, he had to remind me like, Matt, you can just take a breath and just trust that all of those stories that have been shared with us over the years, that they're there, they live inside you, they're in your bones, that you can just trust the words on the page and trust that, like we can play our relationship and just be present together on set. And he was right. When we showed up on day one, all Daryl's stuff was shot on the first day. And it was all there. It was just a matter of trusting that it was, that the work had been done and that those stories would live through the words and these characters.
I know it's late, so I just wanted to just extend to anybody. Does anyone have any questions? Anything? Thoughts?
Yes.
Were you guys shooting on?
That was an Army Mini.
And,
sorry. No, you go.
For the aerial shots, were you guys using drone or helicopter?
Drone. Yeah, in our last screening, TJ Millard, who was our aerial cinematographer, he had joined us, and TJ shoots, he's a military veteran, he flew helicopters for the Army, and now he works for Paramount and does a lot of their aerial cinematography, so we're very fortunate to get him on our film and work with us. He also plays the prosecutor in that scene.
Okay, I'm Tony's kid, so he played the...
Oh, you could say,
Oh,
yes.
Wait,
Tony B.
oh, you're Tony B. Oh my gosh, I love
he
Tony.
was so
I've
great.
known-
He brought such, because he's he's from there.
Yeah. Well, he's an
Well,
institution.
yeah.
Everybody knows. I think
Everyone
it's amazing.
knows Tony.
But
Yeah,
sense of
it was
realism
great.
as soon as he walks through the door.
Yeah, I appreciate that you guys let him have a little comedy in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is anybody else? Yeah. Sorry.
Oh, no,
Sure.
yes. Go
You
ahead.
go.
Oh, okay. The strategies that Virginia Madsen's character deploys for helping him cope, is that typical of what, if people do go and get help, is that typical of how they handle it, or is there a set pattern of what?
Yeah, it can. so I tried to show the audience, like, so first off, those were all treatments that I had done to me, but also, like in my research, but also I had witnessed. So for instance, and there's so many different ones, so in a 2-hour movie, I had to choose like which ones had the most efficacy or were more prevalent, so I wasn't gonna show you ketamine treatments, cause that's just sort of, but so we went into prolonged exposure, which is when he's just recording his conversation, and then that would normally take on a life of you keep listening to your own voice tell the story, so it becomes something that has happened but is not happening to you. EMDR is the light treatment with the sound and buzzing that's very common. When I first started my research, it wasn't a light system like that, it was just a wand. It was very, very basic, and over the years that evolved. But yeah, like we had a scene that we actually had cut out with a neuropsych technician that's processing him as he's getting sort of back into the VA, where they do like cognitive and memory tests and so on, which are very common to it. But yeah, all of that stuff it's in steps, obviously, and but all that is, and just to be clear, EMDR is I'm not a doctor, so I'm not advocating, but is a very effective treatment that we had a lot of veterans come forth and say, yeah, that worked really well.
I was gonna say, first of all, I loved it. I thought you guys did
Thank you.
very well acted, very well written and everything. And one of the things I thought was it felt very researched, very well researched. I could really tell that, you guys, it came across that you guys had a lot of experience with understanding these characters. I guess I was curious, how much of this is fiction? Is there certain like aspects that, are somewhat influenced by specific stories and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, we sat in front of hundreds of people, and there were definitely components in it that were loosely based on actual events. I mean, I certainly, as a writer, didn't take any liberties to just invent things that would be military-based or veteran-based, because I wanted it to ring true. So there's just certain things, like to give you an example, when I'm in the car with Coach O, and I go on a tear about like, nah, I'll do the time, I'm not gonna sit around with a bunch of whiny fobbits, and that's all, I heard that all the time from veterans. So stuff like that, like all the stuff that Bonnie Curtis Hall's character says, that was well informed from my time spent with Vietnam veterans doing the honor flight out of Austin, where, after you go to the wall, if it's the respective memorial in DC, you go out for a whiskey that night and you're gonna hear all sorts of things. And when you hear it enough times, you're like, that's just what it is, so there was parts of that, and then obviously in his civilian life, we pulled from stuff in our own lives, and then just stuff that we had sort of come across where, you're not defined by your trauma, but you're also, not everybody has been deployed, not every veteran sees combat, and oftentimes if there's trauma, it can be from childhood. So taking a line as simple as being rotten like the apple, I mean, that's stuff that can stick with you into your adult life. And so we wanted to show that, because I saw that kind of stuff in the research that I was doing.
Sir, you had a question?
So, yeah, I was trying to find out. I really like the, at the end of the project and cinematography, and also produced the movie. I really like the composition and the cinematography was really brilliant. And that photo reminding me of one of the Matt Damon. What is the name of the Matt Damon?
Good Will Hunting?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
This picture is really reminding that photo.
Yeah, it was, it was something I always had in my mind's eye. I always pictured, I always pictured that it was possibly, if you had to think of the poster, it was probably Vondi and I on the back of the truck. Because that's the first time that these two characters have made a real sort of breakthrough, and they're like family, they need each other, and they know that. So I always kind of envisioned that, and then as we got filming, it became increasingly clear, oh yeah, it really should be that, and yeah, that was.
And also, I really liked the harmony between these two characters, you and him. So it was really such a brilliant choice, the the first scene that he's slipping in front of the door, and then they fight. It was so.
Oh, thank
Oh,
you.
thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Sir?
I wanted to know what was the biggest challenge like while filming?
You know, and I think this will ring true for you, being a veteran, was getting it right for you.
Yeah.
You know, like that. I mean, we get asked this because it's like a 14-year journey, and like you never think it's gonna be that long, right? You don't think it's gonna be longer than 2 years when you set out, depending on what your objective is. But I think that like our biggest challenge and the hardest part was ensuring that it was authentic to the people that we were representing.
Yeah, you definitely did that.
Well, I appreciate it.
I loved it. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that, yeah, and that means a lot to us, because, you know, we wanted to show something, like we had studied the films in this genre, and we were trying to understand what worked and what didn't work, but then also try to, you know, in terms of making a piece of art, trying to make it entertaining, but stay truthful to the folks that we were holding the mirror up to. And as the writer, I never judged the characters that I was writing. I was just trying to write as I saw it, as we all saw it, right? And I think that like what's important to mention is that I never sat in front of a veteran that I would ever say was broken. I never sat in front of a veteran that was living in a, like, feeling sorry for themselves. There were fragments, but they were never broken. And I felt like too often we see that, and I felt like that's not, even the people that had been through horror in combat, that's not how in their day-to-day, in my experience. The other thing I would say too is that, you know, when we started this research, it didn't just like end, right? So the people that you met with, say, 13, 14 years ago, if you were fortunate enough, as we've been, we remain friends with them. So you get to see their own journey. And that informs also the writing, right? Because you get to see where they've gone, their triumphs, their challenges, in their journey. And so, you know, we were lucky to call those folks now our family.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.